Where is it? Oh. Good morning. That'll wake everybody up. I'm Barb Hefner, a member of your parish committee. We're glad you're here, whether that be in person or online. A warm welcome to visitors. We hope that you'll join us for coffee and conversation after the service. It will be downstairs. You can just follow the flow of traffic and the smell of coffee. We're also happy to welcome Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, who is the Executive Director and Senior Minister at the UUUM. Our mission is to build community, to search for meaning, to deepen our spirituality, and to make a better world. To learn more about First Parish, please visit uuwayland.org or contact Kate Holland, who is our Director of Education and Engagement. You can also reach out to a member of the parish committee or to Reverend Stephanie with any questions. A big thanks to all of our other service participants. They're listed in our order of service. To keep us all safe, the participants who are speaking in front of the congregation this morning unmasked have tested this morning, tested negative. And if you're speaking here and have not tested, we would kindly ask that you wear your mask. Please join me now in taking a moment to say hello to one another as well as to the folks online. Oh, that camera too? Okay. And now we have a couple of announcements. I have one real quick. November 19th, you might have seen the posters up there. We're doing a holiday pop-up sale with fair trade items, with items from a couple of nonprofits, some gently used holiday ornaments and decor, and also there's going to be a wonderful shop for kids to shop for presents for family and friends. And over to Pat Sims for another announcement.
I'm wearing my holiday hat, and I have a red and green paper candy cane. So, what do you think this announcement is going to be about? COVID certainly did change the way we did Decorate the Tree for the past 2 years, but this year the tree will be up. It will be decorated with these red and green paper candy canes, just as it has been for the past 20 plus years. So this First Parish, this First Parish tradition lives on. Unless you are new to First Parish, you know that Undecorate the Tree is an opportunity for us as a community to share our gifts with mothers and children who have survived domestic violence and who are facing enormous challenges. So here's the drill. Next Sunday, the tree will be up, decorated with the paper candy canes. The one change, it won't be in the vestry, it will be in the commons, with the exception of when the holiday pop-up sale is on the third Sunday, which it will then move to the vestry and then back again into the commons. So if you do attend in person, or if you come in during the weekdays to the church, please do consider taking a candy cane or two, signing it out, and all gifts need to be returned by November 27th. So this all wraps up during the final Sunday of November. And if you're attending services on Zoom, you can still participate. If you would write a check to the Alliance First Parish of Wayland, and rather than sending it to the church, to the post office box, it'll be quicker if you send it to me, Pat Sims. I live here in town, 47 Rice Spring Lane. All this information will be in the November Unitarian, which will be coming out in the next couple of days. And the third way to participate is you can buy a Target gift card. That is the store of choice of the moms. And you could drop it off in the collection box, which is right outside the door on the parking lot off Route 126. This is our 17th year that we're partnering with REACH, the organization in Waltham, that's dedicated to the safety, healing, and empowerment of survivors of domestic violence. And you can go online and read more about their organization. And as we know, there are many ways that we can express our commitment to social justice, but please consider providing financial support to the moms and the children who are the survivors of domestic violence. And a final, the moms and kids, thank you.
This is the day that we learn from. We wake up, arise, pay close attention to the rising sun and the birds singing even as the cold closes in. The trees stand firm, gesturing to sky, and also begin a long reflection and a letting go. Their leaves rest, twist, and heave into the cooling air. Everything is settling in to a new season. Everything is changing. Everything is beautiful. Now, this morning, the earth testifying to beauty. This is the day that we have been given. Attend to. This day to learn from. Hold firm, friends, and let go. Let us worship together.
I now invite the Levine family to come forward to light our chalice. I believe it's on the windowsill. And to also lead us together in our covenant. Later today, I'm leading a membership class. And one of the things we always talk about is the importance of covenant as the center of who we are, and how we say this every week to remind us of our identity and our promises of how we are to be together. I'll let them.
With open minds and loving hearts, we gather to search for meaning, to care for one another, and to work together for a better world.
Reverend Mary Margaret, in her opening words, spoke of the beauty of this day. Our opening hymn is 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. Let us sing these delightful lyrics to celebrate the beauty of this earth. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Good morning. My name is Kate Holland. I'm the Director of Lifespan Education and Engagement here at First Parish, and my pronouns are she, her. This morning I have a story to share with you that is a fable, and it has been told for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it must be a really good story, right, if they keep telling it. So my story starts in a land where it has been a hard summer. It has had very little to eat. The grasses and things have kind of died down, which the small game has kind of gone away that feeds some of the bigger animals. And the fruits on the trees have become very scarce. In that place, there was a pack of foxes. And one day, They were so excited because they came across a tree that had beautiful golden fruit on it that was ripe and luscious. They couldn't believe their good luck. Well, unfortunately, they tried to get the fruit, but it was just out of reach. They jumped and they jumped, and they tried throwing stones, which for a fox is not very easy. And so they did everything they could think of. And most of the pack said, well, let's just see if we can find something else. Even though it's good, let's go. But one of the foxes said, no, I'm going to try. I know I can do this. And he jumped and he jumped, and it was just out of reach. And he started to get kind of discouraged, and especially when the rain from the heavens just started coming down in buckets and buckets. So the fox ran under the tree, and he waited, and all of a sudden, he noticed the rain was so heavy that it started to bend the branches down. He was so excited. So he jumped up, and he didn't hit a fruit, but he hit a branch, and it was like manna from heaven. All of the fruit started to fall down, and there was a huge amount of it. He was so excited, and he feasted on the fruit. And he even called his friends back and let them have some too. So the story is great. It tells us about how hard it is to keep trying. And sometimes other people give up, and it's even harder for us when other people give up. But we can find the strength in ourselves to find those things that are going to help us keep going. So this morning, I'm going to invite my friends that are going to their Seek class to head on down to the Stokey Library. And all of you are going to raise your voices and sing us out of the sanctuary this morning. Thank you.
I am not Alyssa Lee. I am the Reverend Dr. Stephanie May. Alyssa is fighting a cold and setting a good example by not being in person but attending online. The reading today is an excerpt from the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. African-American scholar and filmmaker Omowale Akintunde says, racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality. For most whites, however, racism is like murder. The concept exists, but someone has to commit it in order for it to happen. This limited view of such a multi-layered syndrome cultivates the sinister nature of racism and in fact perpetuates racist phenomena rather than eradicates them. The good-bad frame is a false dichotomy. All people hold prejudices, especially across racial lines in a society deeply divided by race. I can be told that everyone is equal by my parents. I can have friends of color, and I may not tell racist jokes. Yet I am still affected by the forces of racism as a member of a society in which racism is the bedrock. I will still be seen as white, treated as white, and experience life as a white person. My identity, personality, interests, and investments will develop from a white perspective. I will have a white worldview and a white frame of reference. In a society in which race clearly matters, our race profoundly shapes us. If we want to challenge this construct, we must make an honest accounting of how it is manifest in our own lives and in the society around us. Our next hymn is 108, My Life Flows On. Please join me in singing by rising in body or in spirit. 108, My Life Flows On.
Flows
Please be seated. And thanks to Mary Margaret for picking such wonderful hymns today. Tomorrow marks a holiday in several different traditions. For many of us, it is simply the secular Halloween, represented here. For millions of global Christians, it marks All Saints' Day. And for those within pagan and Wicca traditions, it is Samhain. As a day that marks the final fall harvest, Samhain falls between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. It is also understood as the day when the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest, an understanding echoed in All Saints' Day and Halloween. Mindful of these different traditions, let us prepare for a moment of meditation by taking a deep breath in and out, and another in and out. As we breathe in, let us draw in the memory of our ancestors, remembering the love we felt with a beloved parent, grandparent, sibling, or friend. May we relish their ongoing presence in our life, through memory, through story, through the legacy of their living that remains alive in us. As we breathe out, let us also acknowledge the tangles we inherit from our ancestors, the habits of prejudice, the structures of racism, the patterns of violence and harm. As we breathe in, may the words and deeds of prophetic peoples inspire our own courage to act with conviction for a more loving, just, and sustainable world. As we breathe out, let us release a bit of ourselves into this wondrous broken world we share with so many living beings, past, present, and yet to be. As we breathe in, let us receive the abundant gifts of a growing season now finished, of new life that emerged even amidst drought, of all that will sustain us in the months ahead. As we breathe out, let us settle into the rising darkness as the nights lengthen and we enter a time of rest for the land, of stillness and sleep for so many of the birds, insects, and animals interwoven in the web of life. And now, as we rest in a moment of stillness, let us give thanks for the gifts of these cycles of life and of generations.
My name is Lynn Morrison. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a lay minister of this congregation. This is the time in our service we set aside to share our joys and our sorrows. In both our sharing and in the support given by our careful listening, we affirm our covenant to care for one another. Thank you to anyone who may have submitted a joy or a sorrow in writing, either in the link that's in the e-blast or anyone who's done it here by filling out a slip. If you wish, if you're online and you wish to share something, you can add it to the chat now. And if you're here in person and you'd like to share, feel free to come forward. And as a reminder, our services are also live streamed on YouTube.
Good morning to all of you on this beautiful day. My beloved son, Jeremy, is a physician who has been assigned duty in South Korea. When I learned about the recent tragedy of young people who died in South Korea at a Halloween party, I could barely hold my breath until I knew he was safe. Now that I know that he is indeed still alive, I have pivoted my most fervent prayers to those who lost their lives or who may otherwise be lost and are still being searched for. And may they be found safe and sound.
Thank you for sharing. I'm not seeing anything additional in the chat or anyone here. So I will light one final candle as a symbol of the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts and minds.
I feel like sometimes if we really started naming all the joys and sorrows we hold, we'd be here all day. I think also of Mr. Pelosi, I'm forgetting his first name, Paul, thank you, and the harm, the violence that he endured, and also the attack then on our democracy. And just as we go into this season of voting and election, that there be peace and safety in support of democracy. Our offering today will support First Parish in all of what we do as a community to support each other, to turn on the heat, to support the music, to simply provide the internet to connect with you online and to connect us with those online. In so many ways, we need your support. And just as a note, as we have a special guest, Mary Margaret, here today, and she brought her very special development person with her, Annie Stubbs, who we know. So if you'd like to learn more about supporting the urban ministries, please touch base with Annie during coffee hour. Thank you. Our offering will now be received.
Good morning. I want to thank my good colleague, the Reverend Dr. Stephanie May, for welcoming me back again this morning. It is good to be here with you. Wayland has long and deep ties to the work of the UU Urban Ministry, from the longtime annual work days that we once shared together, to very recently the contribution from the Lydia and Mariah Child Fund to install an accessible pathway into our new Peace Garden. I'm so thankful for that support on our grounds and our campus. There are many wonderful supporters here who have contributed in time and talent and treasure to the work of the urban ministry. Among them are Charlie Anderson, Natalie and John Thompson, Ross and Lynn Trimby, Kathleen Lang, John and Molly Beard, Barbara Buell, Marilyn Kaczarski, Linda and Steve Collins, and so many others. I want to appreciate the delegates who connect to Wayland and the urban ministry, Reverend Dr. May, Susan Crowley-Bechtel, and Lee Anderson. And also just acknowledge that there have been folks from this congregation who have been really foundational to our work, including Chris Nelson, who was our board chair for many years and led initially our meeting house restoration, and the Reverend Ken Sawyer, who was on our board for so many years and was just such a champion. And we were so honored to receive some gifts honoring his memory at the urban ministry. Once in a while, there's someone who really steps forward in a special way, and I did want to give a special acknowledgement this morning to someone who has, over the last 2.5 years in the thick of COVID, stepped forward to be a real champion of the interior restoration of our meeting house as we transform it into an event space to highlight Roxbury artists and serve the Roxbury community, and that is John Beard. I brought something for him because he has been extraordinary in driving our train to raise money for the meeting house. So I have this framed portrait of our beautiful meeting house on the hill of the Roxbury neighborhood in Boston to give to John.
Place to be. Do come to the UU Urban Ministry Meeting House, now in reconstruction to become a resource, helpful resource for the Roxbury community, in which it's located. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, John, for all you've done. He's really been amazing. Don't know what we would have done without him. So it is good to be here in this beautiful autumn when everything is changing. I love this season where it's still green but softening to yellow and champagne red, leaves falling and clustering in doorway corners, the zinnias still bright in the garden. As a gardener, it's an end to the gardening season, or at least an end to the growing season and the beginning of a season of dreaming and planning for next year. Are there any gardeners here? Indoor gardeners, outdoor gardeners? A few. So I have been a gardener of sorts since I was 11. And I went into our backyard and I turned over some dirt and I planted carrots, too closely, never thinned, that emerged as these sort of gargantuan orange bulbs with these spindly legs. I've continued ever since, through many years, to dig in the soil, plant seeds, grow mostly vegetables, always a somewhat impatient and impulsive gardener. Are there any impatient, impulsive gardeners? So last year, I decided to slow down and deepen my gardening practice, and I enrolled in a master gardening certification program. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't secretly drawn to the idea of becoming a master gardener, an expert holding impressive knowledge beyond that of ordinary gardeners. And instead, it was like this. It was like having this door opened to not mastery, but to the vastness of all that I don't know. What I earned my certification in was the certification of knowing all that I don't know, that I formerly didn't know, I didn't know, and in fact, I will never fully know. That was my certification. It's hard-earned. Instead of tips on fertilizing tomatoes, was a world of knowledge of what it means to tend to the earth right around me. From the value of native plants to the dangers of invasive species to how rain can flow down our gutter spouts onto our driveways and then flow into the stormwater and pollute the bay. The one thing I most clearly learned in my master gardening course is that if master gardener means being an expert, I will never be one. I will always be learning and failing and trying. And that is just what it feels like in my work at the urban ministry. It's just what it feels like in the work of racial justice. To begin a journey that is far more than I ever imagined, that I will never be an expert in, and that is more essential than I understood. So it is good to be here this morning to share that journey with you. Wayland is one of 46 Unitarian Universalist congregations around Greater Boston that are members of the UU Urban Ministry, and we are a 190-year-old nonprofit founded by the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian minister. Reverend Tuckerman would go out into the streets of Boston to be with people, and he was committed to listening to those who were oppressed and to educating privileged Bostonians about poverty and the injustice that created that poverty. He became known as the father of modern-day social work. He merged the justice work of several Unitarian congregations, and the urban ministry's member congregations since then have been central to its work. Over time, we've done many things: built elder housing, opened a food pantry, had a free legal clinic. About 50 years ago, one event steered our course to our work today. In 1976, an urban ministry member congregation, the First Church in Roxbury, folded. The church had been founded in Roxbury in the 1600s by the Puritans, and the congregation worshiped on that spot through the centuries, through the Revolutionary War, through the Civil War. Roxbury in time became an affluent white suburb. But by the 1970s, the urban and suburban landscapes around the country were changing. And Roxbury in Boston had become the heart of Boston's African American community. Throughout the decades in Boston, government-sanctioned covenant restrictions, redlining, and racist FHA and HUD policies had encouraged an exodus of white people from city to suburbs, while African Americans could only find housing in neighborhoods like Roxbury, where the housing stock was older, where banks refused home improvement loans, and the government disinvested. In that context, the congregation of First Church Roxbury had dwindled. So First Church Roxbury's last members decided to close. They bequeathed their property and historic buildings, Boston's oldest surviving wood frame church building and a nearby parish hall, on a large green space overlooking the Boston skyline. That's the ground on which I stepped 8 years ago when I arrived. Our programs were a domestic violence shelter, youth programming, and weekend activities for young children. But beneath that array of programs pulsed something else. It was the work of confronting racism in Greater Boston. Our location cried out for it. That wasn't what I signed up for, though. On my first week there, the killers of Michael Brown were not indicted. Michael Brown was an 18-year-old African-American youth shot and killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. You may recall it. I've told this story before, how that week the staff of the urban ministry came to me and asked me to make a public statement on the death of Michael Brown and on the fact that the officers who killed him were not held accountable. I sat in my office, nervous, lit a candle, and breathed. I didn't want to make a statement because I was new, and I didn't know what to think of the killing of Michael Brown, and I didn't know how to talk about racism, and that wasn't the work that I came to do. I had come to run programs to help people. That's what I came to do. But what I was called to do was a whole other matter. The urban ministry was given an extraordinary gift of location, one we are called to live into. We are grounded in this amazing community of Roxbury. Its story tells the national story of racism, urban renewal, and segregation. And it also, too, tells the story of resilience, Black community organizing and resistance, and cultural richness. And we are encircled by suburban communities also shaped by racism in reverse, shaped by policies that have given benefit to people who are white, policies that have kept these communities white by design and that have UU congregations at the center of them, congregations who are also called to dismantle racism and have the power to make change. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our faith to do the work of dismantling racism, the work of real justice in Greater Boston. Over time, this work at the intersection of communities has cured me of my reluctance to deal with race. I learn daily about the history of racism and how racism is foundational in this country and how it shows up in every single system. It is the root cause of enormous suffering, from the racial wealth gap to health disparities, to the heart of the prison industrial complex, to the reasons why our communities are so segregated. Here are a few of the measures of the impact of racism from the Brookings Institute. 1 in 3 Black men born in 2001 will spend time in prison in their lifetimes. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, the juvenile justice system confines Black youth at 4 times the rate of white youth. 1 in Black families have 0 or negative wealth. Many of us by now have heard the statistic from the Federal Reserve Bank that in Boston, white Bostonians have a net worth of $247,000. That's your assets minus your debt, while Black Bostonians have a net worth of $8. In the United States, 1 in 3 Black children live in poverty. They are 3 times as likely to live in poverty as white children. 1 in 7 Black children suffer from asthma, and according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, Black Americans are 3 times as likely to die of asthma. That's just one example of a health indicator. The average lifespan in Roxbury is 30 years less than it is 1 mile away in Whiteback Bay. Meanwhile, white people continue to hold most of the power, control, and resources. D'Angelo, in her book, White Fragility, which you heard Reverend Dr. May read from earlier, gives a few examples from 2016, 2017. They may be a little different in 2022, but not by much. Here are some examples. The 10 richest Americans are 100% white. U.S. Congress, 90% white. U.S. governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. People who decide what TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide Which books we read, 90% white. People who decide what news is covered, 85% white. Teachers, 82% white. Full-time college professors, 84% white. This is the world that we move in, where white people hold power and control of systems that still benefit and reflect us, and that disadvantage Black Americans. A little over a year ago, the Urban Ministry adopted a new mission that faces that reality head on. We committed to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. We know that we alone can't dismantle racism in Greater Boston, but we can use our strengths to work our patch of Greater Boston. Since we adopted that mission statement, we've been imagining what that work calls us to, what it asks of us, what we will need to do and change and begin anew. It is hard and messy and sometimes slow work. It will take trying and learning and rolling up our sleeves. And the lessons from the garden are those that I carry into this work too. Lesson number 1, test the soil. That is, what is in the soil? What's our history? What's beneath our feet? The Urban Ministry is committed to examining our history, the inherited history of the First Church Roxbury and the history of the Urban Ministry. We've engaged a researcher from Harvard's African American Studies program to look into the history of enslavers and the enslaved connected to First Church Roxbury. He is completing his research, which shows a depth of enslavement related to the church with even its very first minister and enslaver. I shared this morning the history of how we inherited our historic campus by white flight in 1976 because it's important to name that we inherited this iconic space in the heart of Roxbury from a white congregation. That is part of our legacy. We need to look more closely at the Urban Ministry as an historically white organization, to look at our own stories and our mistakes. We all need to do that work. In Robin DiAngelo's book, we heard from African-American scholar Amawale Akintunde, who said, quote, "Racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality," end quote. But for white people, DiAngelo says, it's invisible, like water. We see race as something that's part of a Black community, like Roxbury, but not necessarily as part of our white communities and history. And our work is to learn to see that water in which we are swimming. DiAngelo says, predominantly white neighborhoods are not outside of race. They are teeming with race, end quote. One way to see that water is in telling and holding up the histories that underpin our churches, our communities, our institutions. Lesson 2, fix the soil. At the Urban Ministry, we commit to change from within. 2 years ago, after the murder of George Floyd, our organization made some clear commitments. One was researching our history. Another is ensuring greater representation of people of color on our board. The priority is cultivating and engaging more community members so our board looks like the communities that we seek to partner with. UUs, many of whom are white, former program participants, mostly people of color, and Roxbury community members of color. Today, 6 of 15 board members are people of color, and when I return to you next year, I hope I'll be able to report that it's near to half. We have diversified our staff leadership and are working to recruit volunteers of color so that at every level of the Urban Ministry there is shared power without shared power injustice persists. Fix the soil. Number 3, plant plants where they should be planted. For years, I planted plants wherever I thought they would look good. I didn't pay attention to the shade or the direction or the wind, so that's why my sun-loving lilac bush didn't bloom at all under the shade of this big leafy tree in my yard. Likewise, we can't create good programs based on just what the staff or the congregations think. We need to hear what the community wants. So this past summer, we convened focus groups of Roxbury business owners to ask how we can partner in closing the racial wealth gap. That information is shaping a pilot project that we hope will launch this winter, one that will seek pro bono skills from member congregations like you and match them with Black-owned businesses who are seeking to grow. We've been meeting with Roxbury nonprofits to see how they want to partner with our member congregations. This summer, for example, City Life Vita Urbana, which protects the rights of tenants in Black neighborhoods that are facing eviction by gentrification, they asked us to help with a mailing. And so UUs from a variety of member congregations came in to put out a mailing to let more than 1,000 tenants know their rights. We need to listen and then listen some more. There are wonderful opportunities to plant the right programs when we do. 4, pull weeds early. Over time, we have faced the legacy of well-intentioned, but sometimes clumsy people who are white, like me, for example, seeking to do work in a Black community. I once met with a supporter of the urban ministry who said in passing how much he liked his neighborhood. It was in the suburbs, and then offhandedly said, as if connecting two things, it's all white people. And I was stunned. I didn't quite know what he meant by that, by connecting those two things. And I was stunned into silence, and it's a silence that I regret. I wish I'd just opened up a conversation and said, so what do you mean by that? And begun a conversation, but instead I let that weed grow. When I came to the urban ministry, staff of color shared stories like this with me, and they echo in the organization, and they're still painful. We're committed to doing better. We've been building a more robust onboarding program for volunteers and staff, one that includes cultural competence training, an understanding of Roxbury's history, and the government-sanctioned reasons why our communities are segregated. White people need to enter communities of color not to fix or help, but with the humility born of an understanding of how injustice was created by design. And we all need to learn how to give and receive hard feedback when we say and do things that perpetuate racism and hurt. Every gardener knows that it's best to pull weeds as soon as we see them, and they absolutely don't evaporate when we ignore them. And finally, lesson number 5, truly lasting gardens aren't built in a day. When we adopted our new mission statement last year, it was the end of a multi-year journey, but this new mission is now the beginning of another long journey. It will take more than my lifetime to complete it. What matters is that we stay the course, learning, stumbling, trying, committed. When George Floyd was killed, we flooded the streets to protest. We made statements committing to change. We must ensure that this commitment is not a fad or a trend that we get tired of. Our eyes have been opened. May they remain so. This summer, after I'd had my master gardening course, I again grew tomatoes. I don't know if it was the soil or the summer's heat, but most of my crops suffered from disease, and they were mostly ruined. It was discouraging. But that failure was opportunity to learn more. I learned through asking and reading how to improve my soil for next year. In gardening, you need to take the long view. A beautiful garden isn't built in a season. It will take years to learn and do and redo. Years of letting things fill in and blossom, of reading and sharing and trying, of beginning again. The only real mistake is giving up. So I'm here this morning to invite you to deepen your work with us, to learn with us, and to support us. In the year ahead, we'll roll out new walking tours to share the stories of Roxbury. Come in for a tour. We'll pilot the new program to partner with Roxbury businesses. Sign up with Annie to share your expertise or make a donation to fund it. We'll again air community conversations webinars highlighting Roxbury leaders speaking on issues that they want addressed. Sponsor a conversation as a congregation, and please watch them. This season, my garden didn't do all I wanted. My potato crop was sparse, and you heard about my tomatoes. But I planted bushes of goldenrod for the pollinators that took, and salvia for the migrating hummingbirds. It remains a deep purple into the autumn. I imagine what's possible as I persevere, and what's possible if we all do that. All keep trying and tending and never giving up. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to stand and join with me in singing our closing hymn, We'll Build a Land.
chat with Reverend Margaret Earl, Mary Margaret in coffee hour, or Annie Stubbs, our former parish committee chair, who's here back here with us today. And if you're online and would like more information, just reach out to myself or to our other delegates, Lee Anderson or Susan Bechtel-Crowley. It's an important connection. Sustained by our connections to each other, to Roxbury, and to all that is holy, let us go and be beyond these walls, bringing more light and life, love and justice to our shared multiracial world. Amen.